How to Become the Boss, Part 4. In The Prince, by Niccolo Machiavelli, he discusses the three ways that a prince becomes a prince: by inheritance, by election, and by ability. He also explains what is needed in the character of a person who wishes to become a prince. He ought to be slow to believe and to act, nor should he himself show fear, but proceed in a temperate manner with prudence and humanity, so that too much confidence may not make him incautious and too much distrust render him intolerable. To become the boss by inheritance. A person becomes the boss by inheritance based on their birth and their family. If you were born into a family that owns a business and one day arises when the leader of the company chooses to relinquish it to you, then it becomes yours and you become the boss of it. If the leader of the company dies and it has been predetermined in a will that it will go to you after their death, then you become the boss of it. To become the boss by election. A person becomes the boss by election when they apply for a position of power, are nominated for consideration and then chosen as the best candidate for the job. If a person in a position dies and you are the next in line for that position, then you are placed in the deceased person's position and then you become the boss through their death. This is sometimes a temporary solution to a lack of leadership, and then you will have to be chosen in a future election. In very rare circumstances, a person is nominated for a position of power when they did not have any intention of becoming the boss. They usually turn down the nomination. If they do accept it, this can lead to a whole new life of control, respect, and riches. Kings, presidents, and prime ministers have been elected by their people for being great leaders who fought to protect their countries. After their great achievements, the people demanded that they lead them. General George Washington became the first president of the United States after winning the Revolutionary War against the most powerful and greatest nation in the world at the time, Great Britain. Everyone assumed that GB would easily defeat the young nation, since Great Britain had help from hundreds of thousands of loyalists. But after 8 long years of battle, the colonists won their freedom from GB by using superior, unorthodox tactics. The feat was done to the great surprise of all the world. After the war ended, loyalists mooks fled to Canada and GB from fear for losing their property and their lives. General Dwight D. Eisenhower became the 34th President of the United States, after he led the Allied forces to victory over Adolf Hitler and his Nazi regime in World War II. Ike was the supreme commander of the Allied forces. He was the one who ordered the troops who discovered the Nazi concentration camps at Auschwitz to film the freeing of the Jews there, awaiting certain death in the gas chambers. The evidence was used at the Nuremberg trials to help convict the guilty men who were just following orders. Because of his decisions, the world discovered the truth of what had been a hotly debated issue of whether it was really happening or not. Bosses have the hardest choices to make and they make the best decisions. Julius Caesar led Rome to victory in battles and rose to the boss position of his country in 49 BC. Even civil rights leaders, such as Frederick Douglass, have been asked to lead. He was nominated for vice president by the Equal Rights Party of the United States in 1872. He would have been on the ticket with Victoria Woodhull, the first woman candidate and advocate for women's suffrage, but he turned it down. Even scum like General Andrew Jackson, who became president after being a leader of soldiers, have been elected to the boss position. He has the distinction of being the only president of the United States to openly defy the decision and orders of the Supreme Court. He sided with the state of Georgia in its decision to force the Cherokee Nation off of their land in the 1830s. Concerning the honoring of the treaty between the U.S. and the sovereign Cherokee Nation, Jackson stated his intense desire to rid the U.S. of its Indian problem. He provided federal troops to help with the ethnic cleansing of Georgia. The long 450-mile trek west, in which 15,000 people traveled on foot and thousands lost their lives, became known as the Trail of Tears. The problem with becoming the boss by election is that it can be one of the hardest things to do and not fall prey to the immense temptation to engage in corruption. The desire to please the ones who gave you the most help in winning the position is the greatest threat to maintaining your professional integrity. When people have control over the lives of others, it can be the most corrupting thing in the entire world. This holds true for upper management positions where one person on the board of directors is your greatest supporter, or when a corporation, lobby, or political party supports your campaign. Politicians are some of the most duplicitous bosses in the world, and those who lobby the Congress are some of the most corrupting forces in government. Bosses who were elected are beholden to their constituents, so they work tirelessly to have the requests of their campaign donors met. They live and die by the money that is given to their run for a position, unless they are self-funded. Sometimes an illegal boss will find what is known as a stool pigeon or a pawn to run for a position in local, state, or federal government. They will select a person who has some sort of salacious past. This person will either be a client of prostitutes, a married womanizer, a chronic sexual harasser, a drug addict, an alcoholic, an indebted gambler, a criminal, or all of these. They will pay for most of the pawns campaign and use whatever means they have to increase the likelihood of them winning. Once in office, this person will be called upon to look the other way when crimes are committed, prosecute their rivals, and reject or enact legislation in favor of their benefactor. The pawn can never break free from this arrangement as long as they live. Continue to the next selection. How to become the boss, Part 5.